Welcome to Blooming Wildwood Homestead. I am super excited today. We are getting some of that much needed rain. We haven't heard the sound of this much rain since probably the first part of June. Today, since it is raining outside, I'm going to be working on making salsa and using up some of those tomatoes that have been freshly picked. We had a huge, I would call this pretty much our end of the season tomato haul. And as you can see here, just a lot of tomatoes that need to be used. Fortunately, my dad was able to get them all picked before the rains came. And so today we're going to be making salsa, which is one of my absolute favorite tomato products. The nice thing about making it on your own is that you know exactly what goes into it and you can make sure that all the ingredients are healthy and exactly what you want. I like to make hot salsa. For me, the hotter the better, but you can really adjust the heat temperature any way that you want, and I will show you how to do that today. Making salsa is pretty easy. However, it is a little bit time consuming, so just make sure that you allow yourself enough time for all of the vegetable chopping. And really, if you had somebody else who was available to help you with this process, it would go a lot faster and could be a great help to you. The individual recipe calls for 5 pounds of tomatoes, but I feel like if I have the tomatoes available and I have the time available while the mess is out, I just as soon do more at one time. So my canning pot, which I'll try to link to one similar down below, but my heavy duty canning pot will hold a quadruple batch. So I have already weighed out about 20 pounds of tomatoes here, and that's what I'm going to be using for today's salsa batch. I put them in this hopper because you can see here it is wire and it has slats in it, so I can just put this in the sink to wash the tomatoes almost like a strainer, and it kind of works double purpose that way. It'll hold the tomatoes but then also allow me to be able to wash in it as well. I can't tell you exactly where this recipe came from. It's like one of those that has been something that we've used throughout the years. You know, it's on the note card. So I'm not sure exactly where the recipe came from, but I do know that we've been using it for quite a few years. You're gonna wanna make sure that you start out with sauce tomatoes. The two varieties that I mainly have here are, actually I probably have 3 varieties in here, mostly Amish paste. There are some Stupus and then a little bit of Nova. All 3 of these are more sauce-like varieties. You're gonna split the tomatoes in half, and then if you take the core out, you can take a look. If there's a lot of liquidy area here, then I would recommend kind of scooping it out. These are pretty firm tomatoes, so they don't have a lot of the seed liquid. So it's going to keep things from getting too runny. The original recipe does ask for you to parboil the tomatoes, which basically just means that you're going to heat up a pot of water and put the tomatoes in the water for 1 minute, remove them, put them in cold water, and then you'll be able to take the skins off. I've done it both ways and I don't necessarily have a preference one way or the other. So I'm leaving the skins on today. If you are using tomatoes that are not organic, or if you prefer not to have skins in your salsa, then you'll want to use the parboil method first. If I find any blemishes, like here we've got a little bit of blemish, I'll just trim that off. Parboiling is not a big issue, but it does take a lot of extra time. So today we're gonna try and do a little bit of time saving here. And then I'm just cutting the tomato up into the size chunks that I want for salsa. If you prefer chunkier salsa, you could leave your tomato a little bit larger. If you like it to be a bit smaller, you could leave it a bit smaller. And that really is just up to you. I kind of go somewhere in between, and it really just depends. I would guess that closer to the end of cutting up all these tomatoes, it starts to get a little bit, the pieces are a little larger just because I get worn down. And you can see here, look at how dry that is. I'm getting very little moisture out of this tomato, which means that it's the perfect tomato for salsa, saucing, slicing, all the tomato things that we want to do. All right, so we've got all of the tomatoes diced up and ready to go. Now we're going to go ahead and add the other ingredients. We're going to need 3 cups of onion for each batch of salsa. So since I'm quadrupling it, I'm going to go ahead and put in 12 cups of onions, and then 2 cups of peppers for every batch. So I will be putting in 8 cups of peppers as well. Today we are going to use purple onions. That happens to be what is still available and what we have from the garden. So I'm going to go ahead and use that today. You can use any type of yellow onion, any type of storage onion will work just fine for this project. And then, of course, my favorite part, and I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk to you about the peppers. I like hot salsa, so I tend to gravitate toward hotter peppers. I harvested a few from the garden this morning. This is what is available from the garden. These are Hungarian hot wax, and they were part of a hot pepper blend that I planted this year. And then these guys are some early jalapeños, and just know if you're taking them fresh from the garden, they are going to have another level of intensity that you don't necessarily get from the store, just because the peppers at the store have usually traveled from somewhere and are not quite as fresh as what you just picked from the garden. So I got quite a few peppers from our garden space, but it's not going to be enough by the time I mince these down. I'm not going to be able to get 8 cups out of this, and so I am supplementing with some peppers from the store. I have a few habanero peppers. They are much hotter than anything else that I've been using, and I do enjoy that added heat and intensity. I have a few more jalapeños from the store, and then just because sometimes I get tired of chopping so many peppers, but I do love the pepper flavor and I love the beautiful color that it adds to the salsa, I have some anaheim peppers as well. That's what I'm going to be adding to our pot. Now, but a little warning, I guess I should say, especially if you have contacts, but I would just recommend this anyway. Wear gloves when you're chopping up this set of ingredients. I wear contacts, and I've made the mistake in the past of chopping up all of the peppers, and even though you wash your hands, the oils from the peppers get into your hand and they last there forever. It feels like, anyway. I'm sure that's not really the case, but they last. And so then when you go to try to take your contacts out, it's disastrous. I've had times where I've had to wear glasses for the next week because I chopped up the peppers with my bare hands. And I've even tried the trick of using milk. Some people say, oh, the milk will just take away all of the heat from your hands and will get rid of that oil from those peppers, but I didn't have any luck with that either. So for me, it's just easier to wear gloves. Also, be careful about washing up your container that you're going to use for chopping the peppers, because that as well can have some of those oils on it. So even if you wear gloves while you're chopping the peppers, if you take your gloves off and then wash the container, you can still get some of that oil on your hands, and it's very painful. I know from experience. We're going to be doing a lot of chopping here, and so I use a little manual food processor to help with some of the onions and peppers. It's an easier way to get things nice and fine. And for me, it's a little bit faster. If you're super quick with a knife or you don't have one, you can always use the knife to help you with this project as well. The food processor is just helpful for where I'm at. So We're going to go ahead and peel the onion. And this is nice and strong. You can smell it from the garden here. Once that's pretty full, and that's just beautifully diced right there. All right, and I'm just gonna go ahead and continue like that until I have all 12 cups into our tomato mixture. We are going to get the peppers all minced up. Now I'm just gonna use the same food processor that I had the onions in. I don't worry about washing it out because everything's going in the same place anyway. So with your peppers, you wanna go ahead and take the top part off. Then you're going to split them in half lengthwise, and that's going to open it up to the center. Now you can see here that there's some ribbing and you also have some pepper seeds. This is where you have to make another decision. How much heat do you want? A majority of the pepper's heat is carried in the seeds. So if you're using hotter peppers, but you don't want it exorbitantly hot, you might want to go ahead and just scrape those seeds out so that you're left with just the pepper itself. And then since I'm using the food processor, I just kind of slice it up again a little bit and then put that in the food processor. Habaneros look a little bit different inside. They don't have a ton of seeds anyway. Usually with the habaneros, I do take the seeds out, even though I do like things to be pretty hot. And then it just depends on my mood or how hot I think the peppers are. Right now I'm smelling a lot of pepper, which tells me these guys are probably pretty warm. So I'll probably keep about half of the seeds in there and I'll go ahead and scrape out the other half just to make sure that it's not too hot. Although, like I said, I love it hot, so I don't know if it ever could be too hot. You have to decide what's best for you. All right, and then once we have that fairly full, we'll go ahead and chop those up. Just look at how beautiful that is. Absolutely gorgeous. Here we have the beautiful mixture. You can see the peppers here. I did add in some minced garlic. I have 2 tablespoons per batch, so about 8 tablespoons here. And then now we're gonna add the final ingredients while it's starting to heat up. We're going to add 1 cup of apple cider vinegar per batch. I am using the Heinz apple cider vinegar here. It's really important to make sure that you have the 5% acidity. There's the picture so you can see which one I'm using. We are going to add 1 tablespoon of cumin, ground cumin, per batch. And finally, I'm going to add in the tomato paste. You can use 2 to 3 cans per batch. Since I'm quadrupling it, I'm gonna put in 10 just for good measure. I wish that you could smell this right now. It just smells delightful. Look at how beautiful that is. I'm gonna go ahead and bring this to a boil, and then I'm gonna reduce the heat. Right now I have it over a medium heat. I'm gonna bring it to a boil, and then I'm gonna reduce the heat down to low, let it simmer for about 30 minutes or until it thickens up a bit, and then we'll be ready to put it in jars. This is just a gorgeous pot of salsa. I just took it off the stove, and now we're going to go ahead and fill up the jars. I'm going to be using my canning scoop, which I love. It has a nice deep scoop in there. You'll notice the curved edge so you can pour from the side. It also has a little hook so you can hook it on the side of your pot so that when you're moving some things around, you don't end up with it getting all dirty or nasty. And then of course, we'll put the funnel onto our jar in order to try and keep the rim as clean as possible. These jars have already been sterilized, so they're good to go. And it's time to just start filling. We're gonna fill it up to about 1/2 inch of headspace on the top. That way, if things start bubbling up when it's cooking, we won't have to worry about it spilling out. I'm gonna go ahead and start the lids. I'm covering them with water in a saucepan, and then I'm gonna go ahead and bring that to a boil. While these are boiling, I'm gonna go ahead and clean off the rims just to make sure that there's no little tomato gunk or anything that could hinder it from sealing. Our jars are clean, and now we're going to go ahead and put our lids on there. I have this really handy little gadget, not essential, but it's kind of nice. Has a little magnet on the end of it, so you can get your hot lids out of the hot water without burning your fingers off. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the salsa was hot, so my jars are hot, the contents are hot. I am warming up the hot water bath just a little bit so that I don't have to worry about the jars breaking when I put them into the water. All right, I went ahead and put my jars into the hot water bath. I can fit 10 pints very comfortably in this electric hot water bath. Now, I had quite a few jars that are still in waiting. I've got 2 more batches to run here, so I've gone ahead, I put the lids on, but I've covered them with towels to keep the heat in so that I can go ahead and start these just as soon as the other ones come off. I'm gonna go ahead and bring that to a boil and process those for 15 minutes, and then I will take them out and start a new batch. Take a look at this gorgeous salsa. Absolutely beautiful. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye everyone.